Hello and welcome to Art Studio Henry. Today I'm going to be showing you my process in painting this urban cafe. This is the reference photo I'm going from. It's one that I took myself when I was out and about. It caught my eye, this cafe. It's got, all that lovely foliage at the front, but it also got a lot of character with this nice, slightly quirky font in its writing up there. And yeah, the nice divisions of the windows and the small little splashes of colour reflecting from the sky and the street on the opposite side. So yeah, I felt this would be a really nice challenge. I'm going to do it in my small A6 sketchbook, which has got watercolour paper in it. It's quite a nice size to work at in that you don't need much paint. It doesn't take you very long because it really is small. Sort of A6 is about the size of my hand, so it really is quite a small area. And today I'm going to be using watercolour and then finishing off with some touches of pen, both in black and white, to bring out little details in it. So first of all, I did sketch it out. I don't always do this. It slightly depends on the subject matter. But this one had a little bit of detail, what with the title of the cafe and lots of windows and the perspective gradually receding. I thought it was a good idea just to sketch out the basics here. So that's what I've done ahead of time. This is something I wanted to show you before proceeding. This palette belonged to my mum, who died recently. And literally, I mean, I've mixed a lot in the big part of it, but literally everything you see around here is dried on paint that she had been using, and she hadn't really painted in the last years of her life, maybe for the last 10 years, not watercolour anyway, a little bit of oil. So it's almost at least guaranteed to be 10 plus years old, all the paint around here. I've been making lots of pictures with it. It's got lots of colours that I haven't got, which is quite nice. I've got some nice purpley pinks here. Had quite a strong purple there, which I'm almost at the end of. Bit of Payne's grey, has got a bit of everything. But I really like this palette for one thing because it's got a lot of slots, but it just shows you how you can use what you've got. If you've got a dried up palette, there's no reason not to use it again. So let's get on with the painting. There's quite a lot of reflection in these windows. It's reflecting the street opposite, and I don't want to make a big thing of the detail, but I want to have some sense of the colour splashing through. And there's some real darks, of course, in these windows as well. So you've got the shadow from, there's a blind here, that's what that wiggly line is. It's one of those blinds that presumably rolls out electronically or winches out. You see I'm letting the colours mix where they will. They're quite wet and so they've bled into each other quite a bit. I might come back when it's just slightly drier and redefine a few of those things. But generally it's quite pleasing. I probably wanted a bit darker just to the top of these panes. But at the moment that's quite nice. We've got some nice granulation going on and mixing other colours. It's quite a sort of pleasing effect. There's a lot of, I've left some space because there's a lot of greenery growing on this cafe, and again I'll probably do it with dark and then pick out some highlights with a pen to give it detail. This actually is the reflection of, in a shadowed form, of the plant that's growing here. It's nice to define the window edges. Again, there's quite a bit of shadow of this shadowed reflection of the plant that's growing. I'll go back in with as I said, a little bit more definition, but just now that this is dried it doesn't bleed through so easily. It's actually the house roofs that it's reflecting, but I don't want to make it so definite that, you know, that's all you're staring at. Okay, so what I'm trying to achieve here, I've sort of started with 3 different greens. There's a very bright, although quite subtle, bamboo growing in here, so that has some quite light leaves. So I put that in first. And then I wanted some lighter tones in this, although, as I say, I'm going to pick out detail with a pen. So I've kind of then put a mid-green and a darker green in, so that it's got something to show up against. And I've kept it fairly wet, so they're sort of mixing somewhat. It's quite dark there, so I'm going to fill that in with the dark. Sometimes, you know, you have to sort of consolidate areas to make them look less fussy, although that area is quite relatively plain, but of course your eye in a photo can pick out a ton of detail, which a picture this size, I mean, I know people do miniatures and put incredible detail in, but mostly one simplifies. What you see, and so you have the character of what you see, but you don't, so you might, I will probably pick out a few leaves to indicate leaves with a white pen, but I won't pick out every leaf because that would just look very, very intense. And I personally find pictures, I like the balance between detail and the sort of serendipity of what the paint does. So I don't like it all to be very precise, because I find that my mind finds a picture more interesting if there's sort of areas of, not necessarily doubt, but sort of imagination, where you could imagine that something was so, because you've just been given enough to sort of see it that way, but not so much that every single thing is prescribed. Slightly darker layers in this. Again, I don't want it to be too fussy, it's a little bit dark. Things do dry a little bit lighter. That's one thing you got to remember with watercolour, that it does dry lighter than how you originally put it down. And I have to say that's something I really could get better at. In preference, I might have made this a little bit darker, and I might go back and make it darker, but it might not be necessary. But yeah, I have a habit of sometimes forgetting, particularly when I'm doing light things, that they will end up really light. Not so bad perhaps when I put in darks like those. But yeah, I forget that's going to be the case. Just a suggestion of what's going on there. You see, I've just put very simple little indication of some level of shadowing on one side of the pot. Again, I'm going to pick out a little bit of detail probably with the pen. Yeah, shadow colours are often quite neutral, so sometimes it's not just a case of darkening them, but perhaps adding, say if it's a green, which is obviously made up of blue and yellow, you might add a bit of red in there, or a bit of brown, which obviously has quite a lot of red in it, and that sort of helps sort of it sit back. It doesn't sit brightly out at you. You know, even though it's a dark colour, it still might dominate quite a bit. So it's quite good when your dark colours are sort of indeterminate in between colours. That sort of helps them sit back in the shadows. Again, I don't want something like text in a picture. Can be, you know, if you do it too accurately, it can sort of overbalance what's here, because of course the human eye, you know, is drawn into things that are written. So you don't want it to sort of, I still do it sort of slightly patchily, if you like. You know, not too definite, or it'll draw the eye within it won't balance with the rest of it. Here is quite a bit darker, so I'll just put a wash over the top of the detail there, just to bring it down a bit. It's less distracting, and also I'm defining the white a bit better because I haven't really gone to the edge terribly well. Although I'm going to put some white in with pen. Some of it is nice to have left as white as well. I might define some of the edges better, and these very thin spindly ones are going to go in the with the pen. I find the pens sort of vary a little bit in their coverage. Sometimes they seem a bit scratchy, and other times they seem to roll well. They seem a bit variant. I think for the moment that works. I shall let that dry and then I'll do a little bit of pen work. Added in a few little details, can't remember which now, but I darkened slightly here the top, just because it's very light going up, and sometimes it helps to have something to hold the picture in. So I'm going to put in a little bit of this white detail. Oh, I know what I'm going to do. I'm just going to rub out a little bit of just lightly take out, particularly here where that was affecting how it looks quite a bit to have those pencil lines still in. Often when you've got pencil lines, I mean, sometimes I don't remove them at all because they get partially obliterated, or sometimes entirely obliterated with the paint anyway. You really can't see them anymore. And the nice thing is with pencil, you can actually still rub it out, even if you put watercolour on top. You can, I mean, if you scrub really hard, of course you'll affect perhaps the paint and take some of the paint off, but mostly you can take it out and it works quite well. I don't suppose that works with gouache, but I haven't really tested that one out because I don't use gouache very much. That's something I'd really like to get into a little bit more, not least because it's quite a different technique, even though on the face of it the materials aren't that different. But whereas you often go from light, put your light paint on first, followed and getting progressively darker in watercolour to some extent, you're layering it the other way around, so you can have dark ground and then start putting light things on. So I think that's quite interesting, and I would like to explore that more. So I'm going to put a little bit of detail in with the pens. Sometimes I don't find they flow that smoothly. Just add a little scribble elsewhere to and they're not as solid. I mean, I'm sure you can get pens which are completely solid, but these ones, yeah, they do the job okay. I'm going to start putting in the white lines that appear here, and I'm not too fussed because a lot of it's in shadow. I'm not too fussed if indeed it isn't very sort of thick, and I might not even do them to be totally complete. For instance, that one's got a bit of white at the bottom, so I might just leave the fact that the top isn't showing, just so there's some subtlety really in the piece. I'd like to continue this a little bit more. So then that's now a mixture of the white page and the white ink. Yeah, I mean the opacity of it isn't absolutely perfect. There's a little bit of blue that still shows through from that light blue, and also I could make all these lines absolutely square, and I still might go back in with a black line and just emphasize them in places, but I'm also not too concerned that it's not totally precise looking, because I think it gives it a bit of character. Maybe the down ones I want a little bit more strength in the vertical nature of them. I think because I had intended it to be a bit of a feature, to have some of the leaves picked out in the white, I'm going to do that now to see whether, you know, I don't want that to be over the top, and to see, because that's likely of all the things to change the balance most. So if I begin it a little bit, then I can see whether I want to carry on with it or not. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.